Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I am your host, Gil Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe. And welcome to the very first week of my May lineup of authors, historians, and future guests. Now, my first guest of the week is author Will Solomon. Will is an author who hails from Memphis, Tennessee. After serving nearly 7 years in the United States Air Force as a military policeman and canine handler, he left the service and pursued his passion for writing. When he's not busy writing books or working on his degree, at the gym or home reading and relaxing. And to tell us all about his book, which I am very excited to learn more about, let's give a huge round of applause to a first timer here on the channel, Will. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, no problem, man. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, Will, before we dive into your book, is there anything more you would like to tell our viewers about your background?
Well, man, to be honest, I think that that summary pretty much summed it up in a nutshell here. So, other than just, currently right now in between my writing, I'm a full-time student as well, just trying to finish up my bachelor's here finally. And I'm still actually in the canine world doing stuff with dogs here. So, planning on sticking with that for a while before I move professions.
All right. All right. So now let's dive into your book. Now, I'm really, really curious about this because I have been seeing this everywhere on Instagram. The cover really grabs the attention of the reader. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your book and sort of where the idea came about to create this.
Okay. Oh gosh, man, this is going to be a long one on here because I'd like to say, it's a bit complex for the most part. So, but yeah, just kind of get started. I would say really it's basically on, like the dark fantasy kind of supernatural side. And I tell a lot of people about it that it's just kind of it's also a historical fiction as well. So I consider a lot of it fiction based on reality. You know what I mean? Um, so there's a lot of events in the world or in the book. I mean that it's kind of starts off right before World War One, right? Then we go.
Oh,
It kind of starts up leading into it, and then a bit of the aftermath too, and then for the later half of the book, we're set basically right in 1940 when World War II is kicking off, right? Um, Off into the Holy Land, or what they call British Mandatory Palestine at the time. So that being said, I consider myself, for the most part, I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist. I'm not gonna lie. So that's kind of one of those kind of like niche things that I really like to dive into when I have the time to. And I just thought it would be cool to kind of like put in a lot of information about that stuff in the book, whether it be a bit bold or just kind of something really subtle to it. I just decided to implement that into the book, as well as some of my religious beliefs in it too, and just a lot of studies that I've come across, regarding like theological things, and
mhm.
just a lot of world religions. Not just your three Abrahamics, but some other stuff that is outside of it, but kind of like in the same web.
Wow, fascinating. So, when did you sort of discover that you enjoyed to write, that you were a storyteller? Was that early in your childhood, or did that come about later in your life?
Yeah. It's a good question, man. So, I would say, really my early childhood. So when I was a kid, I really enjoyed just stuff like, reading, writing, really, really embracing part of my, creative aspects to me. And aside from that too, I used to actually be a pretty decent artist, when I was a
Ooh.
lot younger. But kind of like, I got to a point, I want to say within really the last 5 or 6 years, where I was like, I want to hone my writing and my storytelling, like above anything else, because honestly, at the end of the day, like, life's too short, man. So you got to kind of pick something or a couple of things that you want to try to get good at, before that time comes. So that's where I kind of made that decision here. But I've always had the more artistic, creative side to me. And, my only regret about that now is just that I waited so long to just, like, really nurture all that stuff.
Hmm. Wow. Very, very fascinating. And I could definitely tell from reading your synopsis on Amazon, on your Amazon page, that you really did a lot of research into crafting this world. I'm actually glad you brought up World War One, World War Two, because I did not think that that would be in the story, or as that be one of two settings in the story. So I'm really, really intrigued by that. And so, leading into the next set of questions, Will, when you created the initial draft of your story, which I don't know if I may have asked you or forgot to ask you, what is the title of your book again?
Yeah, so this one is just called The Nameless War. And
Okay.
I'm actually I'm working on the second one now. I want to say I'm about a third of the way through with it. And the second one is basically, it's a direct sequel, but also a spinoff at the same time. And the second one that I plan on releasing is going to be called Leaves in the Sun.
Ooh, all right. So when writing the Nameless War, the first draft, sitting down, what was sort of the initial need or desire you wanted to satisfy in your future readers?
Well, honestly, when working over, or let's say working on the first draft, right? Like, it was kind of like, I think I started it was around 2019, late 2018-ish, maybe.
All right.
And, at the time, just kind of like, it wasn't really more so thinking about, like, oh, how can I impact readers, or can I publish this in the future? It's kind of more of just like satisfying just this immediate impulse that I had to just kind of like start writing, so, or start writing again is how I should put it. But it was kind of literally, just it's weird, man. So on that first draft, I was just I was having a hard time sleeping that night, and
Mm.
I'm sure you can kind of attest to how it's just kind of miserable. Just, you're laying there in your bed trying to sleep, but you can't, right?
Yes.
And I said, you know what, like, I'm just going to get up and do something, that's been on my mind for a while. And it was like 3:30 in the morning or something like that. So I just got up, opened my laptop, and I just started writing kind of whatever was coming to my head at the time, I mean, with kind of like a basic outline of the story that I had conceived at the time, but the drafts, dude, I can just say it's kind of been like just a whirlwind, it's just kind of like it'd been scattered, just kind of going around everywhere as far as, storylines, idea. There was nothing really like solid or cohesive about it at the time. I was just writing to, satisfy those impulses to it. And over the last 2 years, I want to say, is when I got to a point to where, okay, maybe I should do an outline to this, kind of plan it a little more. And, then at that point, I just got something put together that I considered acceptable, and I was like, okay, this is what I want to implement. These are the themes. This is where I want the story to go. And I feel pretty good about it at that point, so it was really, I just kind of shot off from there, really. And I don't, it depends on the authors, some do excessive planning,
Right.
like down to every minute detail of the book, right? And not to say that I don't, I think there has to be some kind of planning, some kind of general outline to it, right? But there was something that, one of my favorite authors, Game of Thrones guy, R.R. Martin, right? I was just reading something that he was talking about, and he likes to utilize this technique kind of called he calls it gardening, if I'm not mistaken. And what I really liked about it is kind of like, it's almost like a free for all kind of thing, where again, you're just kind of riding, you're going off on these impulses, and you just kind of, I guess you just kind of play around with what you write, and then as you just progress through the story, you just kind of, how do I put it? You just kind of go from there, and you just start to figure out like, oh, okay, maybe this is a good idea, or maybe this isn't, and it's just, I really just like, I just really like the whole free for all aspect of that whole gardening thing that he was talking about. And if, if anyone has read his books for that matter, like they'll be able to relate to what I mean by that.
Definitely. So it seems like at the end, like your whole goal setting out with the Nameless War is you wanted to tell a really good story, a really original story, a fresh story that would captivate your readers. And what would you say is sort of like an add-on, the promise you're making to your readers who pick up the Nameless War and its eventual sequel coming soon?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just say, to anyone that picks it up, I mean, you're going to be in for a ride on it for sure, and it's going to, I tried to make it to where, it just really explores like a lot of just complicated subjects, right? Like between, let's just say topics like good and bad, right? And then like just the gray areas in between all of it, and other complicated things, like that might be politics, economics, religion, so on and so forth in it, right? And then again, or also just really exploring these conspiracies that's been implemented into it as well, so like I'm sure there's some parts in it that, you might come across of that it might be a little too much, or let's just say eye widening on it for sure, and it's just, again, it's a lot of it's just based, it's fiction based on reality in it too.
Nice. So now let's jump ahead. So after you've written the first draft and you've got an editor and a cover artist, you polished it. It's the best that you can get it, and you just put it out there onto the digital stage. What was the initial feedback like? And from that feedback, was your promise validated by the responses?
So, what I'll say about that is, I mean, it's still relatively new. I think it's only been out for a couple of weeks now, so I haven't really been able to just get like all of that complete feedback for it, but kind of like just based on, let's just say, my immediate circle of people, whether it be family, friends, whoever, right? I've gotten generally positive feedbacks, reviews from it, although it might be just a little bit biased, but right. I mean, feedback is feedback nonetheless. And so right now I'm actually I'm working with another party on this book as well as the second one, just trying to like get everything kicked off and going here. And it's been really nice to hear a lot of these third-party opinions from people that are, professionals, people that have been in the game longer than myself, so it's also been humbling at the same time. And I'm just really glad that I got the opportunity to work with them. And what's really cool is, this one guy I'm working with now, he does a lot of voice acting too, and
okay.
stuff like that. So, at some point here soon, probably we're talking about doing a couple I guess, narration ads, and it's just based on narrated segments from the book. And, if everything else goes well after that, we might try to look into turning it into an Audible at some point, which I think would be really neat.
That's actually really cool. And I'm actually really, really hopeful for that, because I think that's a new venture. And I think that's always fun when authors can get into the audio world, because when you have someone reading your book, you allow the reader to imagine the story in their mind, and it takes them to your world even more. And ultimately, that's at the end of the day what we want to do, is just tell good stories and just take people away from reality and into a new world. Which then kind of leads into another question, a more serious question, which I think you brought up, Will, which is writing is a very lonely venture. You spend hours and hours writing a project. You suffer the long nights, the long, tiring nights, not knowing if it's going to be good, and then putting it out there on the digital stage and wondering, what am I doing? Am I actually doing this? And that sense of imposter syndrome in the back of your mind. Every author has imposter syndrome, still struggles with imposter syndrome. And my question to you is, Will, have you ever had those moments of imposter syndrome? And what has disciplined you to continue writing? Because you have told yourself, this is something that I want to do because I'm passionate about it.
Yeah, yeah. So, first off, I'll just say I 1000% agree with you. It's a lonely venture on that for sure. I mean, can't recall how many weekends, or yeah, let's just say weekend nights that I've spent, just at my house, just, writing or working on parts of this book. On that, so I mean, I've dedicated, and I want to say, like, I've sacrificed a lot of time, in doing this. So yeah, I mean, I get it. And just as far as you said, what was it, the imposter syndrome on it? You
Yes.
were talking about it first. Yeah. I'm sorry. I had to collect my thoughts again here for a second. But
No problem.
I think really, everybody, or every writer, I should say, they're always asking themselves, like, why am I doing this? Is it going to be good enough? What's the point, or whatever. I think if anyone said that they never had any kind of misgivings like that or whatever, they'd be lying to you,
Right.
On that. And it's kind of like, once you have your work and you're ready to show it to the world, or even for me, I'm a very introverted person, and like, even just, showing it to friends or family members, that's like, to me, that's almost like, it's almost like the same as, like, you're having to walk down the street naked or something,
Right.
I mean, it's just, you're sharing something, just because it's so private and so personal and so meaningful for you. It's kind of hard to break out of that initial shell, but I've been fortunate, that the people that I have shared drafts to at first, or even the people that I'm working with now, have been very receptive. Their critique's been very it's been very meaningful as well, and I think that plays a big part into it.
Awesome. And you may have already mentioned this before earlier. You mentioned one of the authors that you've really admired, George R. R. Martin. What other authors would you say have really been your role models in terms of character development, story structure, narrative style, and overall helping you get your author's voice, your own style of telling stories?
Yeah, yeah. So, aside from R. R. Martin, I really I got a few I can name off here, actually. So, Frank Herbert, the author of the Dune series, I'm sure
Hmm.
you're familiar with him.
Right.
Man, I love the Dune books on it. Some of the best sci-fis I've ever read, and even some of his other works, or his other sci-fis have been really interesting too. And he did one book that it actually wasn't sci-fi. It was kind of a very kind of more of like a spiritual kind of drama that he did. It was called Soul Catcher, and I read
Ooh.
that one, and despite not being a sci-fi, which is what he's known for, it was really good for being his one and only non-sci-fi. And I would say, aside from him, I'm a huge Ian Fleming fan. The guy that wrote all the James Bond books,
Right.
and George Orwell. I'm sure you know who he is. He only did 2 books besides his essays, which was 1984, and he did Animal Farm as well. I've read both of those, and there's just something, man, about not Animal Farm. I mean 1984. It is just it was just so well written, and it's just really ahead of its time. It's almost just like, I don't know, dude. It's just kind of like, it's so unexplainable at how good it is, and that's I mean, all those guys are, they're really authors who I try to aspire to try to be on their level, or hopefully be on their level one day, but
Right.
I would say for the most part, that's kind of where I adopt a part of my style or influences from all those guys in particular, and I another one, I like Stephen King a lot too, a lot of his books. So those would be my top authors. So
Nice. Very nice, Will. And now we're moving into the business side of the interview about the marketing of the book itself. So let's start with the first question, Will. So when you decided to publish The Nameless War, did you initially want to go the indie self-publishing route, or did you want to try sending a query letter to a publishing house and have it traditionally published?
yeah, so I definitely looked at the traditional route before, and it's kind of like you look at traditional versus self-publishing, and it's one of those things, right? You have to weigh the pros and cons of it, and you have to keep in mind too, right, that regardless of which route that you take with that, nothing is guaranteed to you. Is the
Right.
important thing to remember, so it's just based on that, I just felt like it would be better for me to just go to self-publishing route, because I mean, it's another thing. It's a really competitive field, because at the same time everyone else is doing it too, but it's just at the same time, it's just another one of those growing trends that people are doing. And you don't even, what's crazy is you don't even really have to be an author or a writer, and you could still just you could technically just put something together, whatever that may be, and then self-publish it.
That's
That's
true.
kind of like, I guess that's one of the beauties of, this up and coming digital age that we're in on it. But I want to say, for the most part, with like the self-publishing, my biggest thing was like, I just wanted as much control over my work as possible.
Nice. And I think that's what a lot of first-time authors always want to do, is like have creative control of their stories. And I've talked to a lot of authors on the channel who mostly have been self-published. I've just recently, well, last month, had my first traditionally published author, and he provided a lot of great insight into the world of traditionally published, and how, yes, traditionally published has a lot of avenues where you can have a wide audience, but you also have to understand it is a business. They have to take your book into consideration, and if it's going to be marketable and it's going to sell. So that's the things that you would have to consider for traditionally published. For self-published, yes, you have more creative control over your story, but you have to find your own editor, your own cover artist. You have to market like there's no tomorrow, and
Yep.
that's all out of pocket, and that takes a lot of to know what to do for your book. And I think marketing is probably the most challenging aspect when it comes to self-published authors, marketing, where on the platform, social media, and how to market. And it definitely, I think, stems from the readership, the audience. So in your opinion, Will, how important is it for indie authors to really understand who they're marketing for? Because you can market for a broad audience to try to get more readership and viewers. But if you're marketing for a specific niche, like if your book is solely hardcore fantasy and you really want to get that specific audience, you have to market your book in a certain way that's going to appeal to them. So I was wondering if you can provide your own insights into that.
Yeah, of course, man. So, with that being said, and I think I speak for most authors in general when I say this, like the whole social media marketing thing, I absolutely hate doing that stuff, like
Same.
for me. And, I was, one of the guys that I've been working with right now. We've been talking about this too. And, he basically confirmed it for me, whereas 70-80% of it's marketing, basically, whether it's going to be successful or not, and he gave some pretty good examples of that. And it's kind of like looking back now. So I'm going to rewind a little bit here. So before I really just fully committed to writing, I did streaming for a couple of years, like video game streaming, basically.
Right. Okay.
And all that, and I would stream, and I wouldn't just stream video games. I would stream other stuff, kind of just like it, just almost like everyday life stuff, kind of like vlogging, basically, and I'm a big gym guy, so I would do a lot of workout streams too. And I was kind of like just thinking one day, well, what, it wouldn't hurt to try. Like, what do I have to lose, really? And
right. What's
kind of weird is people actually kind of like the workout streams more than the video game stream, And it's another thing with streaming too. That's another really competitive venture to try to get into, is what I'll say, because really at the end of the day, like people are coming to watch you, not necessarily what you're playing or what you're doing or whatever. They're there for you, right, on that. And it's the same thing. It's kind of like the same thing with podcasting too, and I actually found that podcasting is one of those things that I actually really enjoyed. And I had a co-host that I was doing with it for a while, but kind of like make a long story short, we just kind of stopped it just because the both of us had other responsibilities we had to commit to, right? And I got to a point, to where like I was just so busy with my life, everything in life, that I had kind of had to pick one or the other, right? When it came to all those ventures. And I just said it's just going to have to be my writing, man. Like, I didn't really have to put too much thought into what I'm going to have to pick, on that. So, and now I have my first book published and working on my second one now. So, I don't regret that decision, but, going back to the whole marketing thing, I knew marketing was important, but that's kind of all I knew is, okay, well, I guess marketing is important, and didn't really put much thought into it after that. But really it's almost everything. When you really think about it, and here recently, this is why I'm working with a company called they're called Creative Quest, actually. Right. And they really help you do all those, all the marketing, the content creation stuff. And I'm thankful that I got referred to them, and a lot of it that's going to help kind of take a lot of the load off, so to speak, because at the end of the day, man, like I personally, I could care less about marketing or being on constantly posting on social media or whatever, right? Because I just feel like my time would be better devoted to, my creative side and just doing, my writing and just trying to trying to tell a story, and kind of like my thing is, first and foremost for any writer, I think really, write for yourself above all else, because that's in today's world, man, you need all the therapy that you can, whatever is therapeutic to you,
Right.
and for me, it's stuff like writing and, working out and all that stuff, that's like, that's my therapy for me, man, and just so happens that, with that writing aspect that I would like to share it with other people, and, hopefully I want to just create something that'll be on the shelves, and, it'll be worth the money spent, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm doing it for me, but at the same time though, like I just want it to be something that like people enjoy.
Awesome. And I definitely can tell that you definitely now have a good sense of who your audience is after really fine-tuning and really nailing in on the audience that you want. And this kind of leads into another question, a really important question. So before I give you this question, Will, let me give you some context for this. So a year ago, I had an author on the show. Her name was Natalie Wright, and we were talking about her book, Season of the Dragon. I didn't know that was her 7th book when I met her at the LA Festival of Books, but she told me that it was. And she told me a very important pearl of wisdom, which, looking at it, it is probably the hardest truth I've had to swallow, which is there is no guarantee that your debut novel is going to be the start of your legacy. Now, there's a 50-50 chance that can go either way. You can be in the one bracket where your debut novel skyrockets into stardom. It gains all the notoriety. It gains all the success. You're able to make a living off the first book to write the next ones in the series. But on the off chance, you may sell a few copies, and it may unfortunately fall into obscurity. And that could dampen an author's creativity and their purpose going forward as a writer, because again, that imposter syndrome creeps back in. But she also said that it should not deter somebody from writing if they are genuinely passionate about this. So my question to you, Will, in your opinion, how important is it for any new indie author to really understand that their debut novel may not be the start of their legacy, but it should not deter them from writing, because they could grow as a writer and hone their craft, and it may very well be their 7th book that gets their name out and starts their legacy.
Yeah, so great topic to bring up, and I would tend to agree. It's a 50-50 kind of thing with it, and just so I'm going to share. This is just kind of more of like personal beliefs above anything else, so just kind of take it with a grain of salt. But so I think really that first and foremost, nothing in life is guaranteed to you. Okay. The only two things guaranteed to you are, unfortunately, death and taxes, right? It's almost, unfortunately, it's kind of like a non-negotiable right now. But, I think that when it comes to like writing, if you think you have something, like you have to believe in yourself first. Just simply because if you don't even believe in yourself, if you don't even have just like that modicum of confidence, like why should anyone else believe in you? And even Bruce Lee. I love Bruce Lee. He's he's a martial artist, but he was also very philosophical too, right?
Yes, he was.
And one of the things he said, I don't remember it verbatim, but just kind of like, whatever you say, you kind of project into reality, basically. So he said, a lot of people have these problems, with low self-esteem, low confidence, I myself included with a lot of that stuff, just, he said, don't even say any of those negative things about yourself, even in like a joking kind of manner, and to an extent, I think there's some truth to it, just to where you can kind of speak certain things into existence, and then at some point it kind of becomes like this kind of like self-fulfilling prophecy, basically.
Right.
And, I think that, as a writer, right, if you're writing and if that's what you're chiefly concerned about, right, it's like, oh, is your first book, or if any of your books are going to sell, or are they going to make you famous, then like you're doing it for all the wrong reasons, in my opinion, because it's going back to what I said earlier. Like, first and foremost, I write for myself because it just gives me that solace to it, and man, sorry, I would say that
It's okay.
yeah, but I would say, like, it may not be your first book, it may not be your second, it could be any other book after that. It's kind of like it's just, I guess it's kind of just a matter of luck, and for me, coming into this, I kind of already knew, like, hey, I'm not going to do this for money, or for like doing this hoping for like some kind of like fame or whatever, because like those aren't really the things that worry me about it. So would I like my novels to be successful? Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, who wouldn't, but I'm not really doing it for all of these like materialistic related things, like I would just be happier if like people just really enjoyed my writing, like that's kind of, that's enough for me. And personally, like I'm kind of I'm kind of a minimalist to an extent, and it's just kind of like, that's just a part of like some other certain belief systems that I've adopted just as I've grown older now,
Right.
So yeah, that's just kind of my thought process on that, and if fame and stardom is something that you're seeking, as an author, I would just say you might want to just pursue some other endeavor for that, because
Right.
I don't think that's really like what it's all about. So that's kind of my take on that.
All right. That's actually very, very true. And also to add on from what another author of mine said is that you don't get anything anywhere in life without getting a few scars. And writing a book and earning notoriety is no exception. You're going to have hard critics. You're going to have people call you out. They're going to spam reviews like there's no tomorrow, but you have to just be focused and disciplined and truly understand why you got into this field to begin with. Because yeah, it's just like you said. I forgot who said this, but one of my authors did say is that if you genuinely want to be a writer, an author, someone in this industry, in this business, look at an author that you admire. Look at what they had to go through to get where they are. And if you can honestly say that, oh, you can do exactly what they're doing and not experience the same consequences, then you're not going to be a writer. You are not going to do well in that profession, because any profession has its share of obstacles, hindrances, and it will emotionally and physically break you. But if you are passionate about something, you will do fine because it will show in your work.
Yeah, yeah. So, regarding to that, I think that even as an author, you kind of need somewhat of a thick skin, to handle all the criticism, because what they say everyone's a critic, right? And there's some truth to that. And
Hmm.
it's just, you have to, when publishing, or putting your work out there, you're subjecting it to criticism, whether it be good or bad. That's something that you just have to accept, and with everything, just take it for what it is, and you just have to understand, right, that you can't make everybody happy. Not everyone is going
Right.
to like your stuff, and that's okay. So for me, like I was in the military for about 7 years, dude. So I've just about seen and heard everything under the sun. So I'm a bit, it kind of desensitizes you to an extent, you know, but I wouldn't say I'm that far gone yet on it too, you know, but and even now, dude, I work you know, where I work with primarily a lot of ex-military, ex-law enforcement. So we all kind of like maintain that environment, you know, just because that's kind of what we're used to and all of that, you know. And I think some of the stuff that we talk about over there, man, or whatever, it wouldn't fly in other places, you know. And we know that too, you know. But again, it goes back to, you know, that thick skin that you kind of have to don on yourself when it comes to that criticism, you know. And at the same time, you know, whether it be good or bad, like, you know, someone might bring up a valid point, or just, you know, might be something that you just think like, oh, hey, like, I never even thought about that. Like, that's not a bad idea on it either, you know. So the way I see it is just, you know, I try to be like a sponge and just kind of like take in everything and just see how I can use it to whatever extent it is, you know. And I think so here's another thing that I've read. I think I want to say I read it off LinkedIn not that long ago. Excuse me. And it's talking about criticism, right? And, you know, in general, as people, we don't like criticism.
No, we do not.
It's just plain and simple, you know. And it's kind of just something that you're going to have to get used to at some point, you know, as you put yourself out there. But what I will say about this is, you know, some people, and I've come across this in a lot of like these, on these forums, you know, like let's say on these like online writing platforms, whether it be like Inkit, Wattpad, Royal Road, whatever, right? Like, everyone on there thinks they're a critic. They think they're like a pro writer or whatever, you know, like whatever floats their boat. And there's a difference between like good criticism and then just kind of like this kind of like brutal honesty. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, you know, real criticism, right, whether it be good or bad, you know, it highlights everything on it from an objective point of view, right? And regardless of what it is, you know, the author can take something out of that, you know, to like further better themselves down the line, right?
Right.
And I feel like just with that, when it comes to like the whole brutal honesty, though, you know, I feel like that doesn't really do anyone any good. You know, it's kind of like you're just doing it for the sake of it, you know, just to be an asshole, basically. I don't know how else to put it on that part of my friend.
You're completely right.
But you know, again, I think like if you're going to be a critic or give any kind of criticism, you know, like just try to point out everything and be a little bit indifferent to it, you know, and just take it as something that can help the author, whoever it is, get better, you know, instead of just disparaging someone like that. So again, that's why I think there should be a very distinctive difference between the two. And at the end of the day, the whole brutal honesty thing, like, I don't think it doesn't do anyone any good. But, you know, that being said, as humans, we have this other proclivity that kind of leans more towards the negative than anything else, you know, and that's just, unfortunately, that's just the way we are, you know. But that being said, that doesn't mean there isn't something that we can do about it.
Definitely. And I'm actually glad you brought that up because, especially with authors, especially indie authors, we all want to help one another. We all want to support one another. And that sometimes is being critical. But just as what you said, there's being critical to help them grow as an author and as a writer. And then there's just being critical just for the sake of being critical with no motivation whatsoever. And especially being indie authors, we have a very small community. We are all trying to help one another and support each other's successes, which I think is greatly important, which kind of leads into the next few questions before we get to the end of the interview, Will, which is for you, you've already mentioned this before. Your family and friends and your inner circle have been very big supporters of you. And I was wondering if you could also talk more about the other authors you have worked with, and I'll discuss if you've ever gotten a sense of validation from other indie authors who have picked up your book, The Nameless War, and offer their feedback, because it's one thing to join an industry of any kind with all the knowledge that you know up to that point. It's another thing entirely when your peers see your work, recognize it, and give credit where credit is due. So I was wondering if you could tell us more about that.
Yeah, for sure. So actually, I'm not going to say that I really worked with him just as much as I've conversed with. So there's another author. His name's John Maldonado, and he's another self-published sci-fi author. And I had reached out to him at first, just kind of asking about the general whole self-publishing journey, all that, so he kind of gave me a rundown of it, and it's helped out massively, I'm thankful that he was as receptive as he has been, and I've read, so I think he's got 2 books out now. It's The Nephilim War, and Tales of the Machine War is his second book out now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I have seen that. I've spoke with him too. Great guy, and I'm actually trying to get him on the channel soon, eventually.
Yeah, and I hope you can, man, because John is a great guy, and I've read his first book, The Nephilim War, on that, and it was actually through John that I was able to get in contact with the people I'm working through now, as far as doing my narrations and the whole marketing stuff. So,
Right.
Again, that goes into like the networking aspect of it. Networking is also important in anything you do, really, any walk of life on that. I think John did say that he got my book as well. I don't know if he's read it or finished it or not, so I mean, if he does, it's cool, and I mean, hopefully I'd like to, have an in-depth conversation with him about it one day, like we kind of just exchange book stuff basically, or author book stuff, whatever you want to call it. So, going back to the question, so John's really the only like indie author that I've really just like conversed with the most. Now, I will say this though. So there's another guy that I was we were doing like I guess you'd call it like a reading swap kind of thing, right?
Right.
And he was reading all the early drafts for the Nameless War, and I would be reading a lot of stuff for several of his stories as well, actually. And I haven't talked to him in a while. I guess, life just kind of caught up with him, or for whatever reason, I mean, and I get it, life happens, but,
Yes.
so in my opinion with this guy, just based on what I've read from his writing, like he doesn't have anything like self-published or just like, formally published in a book or anything like that. But like his writing's good though, like really good in my opinion. And I've told him this too. I said, dude, like, I said, I think you're better than me personally on it. And I said, you need to, if you can, I said, you should really try and publish a couple of your stories, because I really thought like they were that good, and he's he's kind of a more modest guy, and he's like, oh, I don't know about that, man, but I was like, I was telling him like, dude, like really, you got something good going for you here. And I just said, I had asked him before, hey, have you had any kind of formal writing education, whether it be like English, journalism, creative writing, or whatever. And he said, no, not really. So just kind of like all his writing is just kind of, I guess, based and learned from just life experiences, which I think that's probably some of where some of the best writing comes from, in my opinion. But I kind of talked to him not that long ago, just kind of letting him know that, like, hey man, like I finally got the book published, the completed version. So just kind of wanted to let you know. And I heard back from him, and he's sounded pretty thrilled about it, and I just said, hey, like when's so I think one of the books he's working on, it's called Diaries of a Fighter right now.
Ooh, all right.
And long story short, the premise of it is it's about this European guy. He's a mixed martial artist, right? Like fighting is just what he loves to do. That's his thing, right? So
Right.
he moves over to Japan to try to slowly kind of like creep his way into that kind of world, all the while navigating the challenges of just being a foreigner in Japan,
Mhm.
and me, like, I mean, I like anime and all the Japanese stuff and all that too, so like that, once I got into his story, like it just kind of immediately captivated me on that, so I hope it's something that he really works on finishing in the future, because I'd really like to finish the rest of it on it. So, but yeah, I mean, going back to it, he's one of those dudes that, like, he's got it, like the talent's there, but I just don't know if that's something he wants to nurture, or look towards publishing. So whatever he does, man, I just hope the best either way. But yeah,
Awesome.
those are my thoughts on that.
Nice. And it goes back to what I said, networking and just meeting new authors. That is what it's all about, because we all want to support one another. We all want to be in each other's successes, and just getting new wisdom from all these people is really important. And you build a community, you build a rapport with these people, and you learn so much, which then leads us, Will, to our final question of this interview, which is, with everything you've learned about writing, about being an author, the publishing of your first book, The Nameless War, working on the sequel, and everything you've learned from your fellow authors that you've spoken with up to this point in your life, what is your word of wisdom to future indie authors?
Yeah. So I will say that, and my who was it? So one of my English teachers told me this years ago. Is also my wrestling coach too, believe it or not. Got an interesting combination there.
Yeah, it is.
But he told me some of the best writers are also like avid readers. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say I mean, it sounds pretty simple and obvious, but I would say just read, read, read. Like, it's going back to, you just need to be that sponge, just absorbing anything and everything that you can, to add to the toolbox on it, basically. And for me, dude, like, whether that be, I read a combination of Kindle. I listen to audiobooks all the time, and then I like just reading plain paperbacks the most. Gotta keep it the original. Sorry, gotta keep it the original way on it. So
Right.
I try to, just always trying to continually just absorb knowledge or just anything that'll make me better. Every day. And just another thing, is like, when it comes to writing or trying to be an author, it's something that you have to treat like a full-time job on it, and, with time, you'll get better, you'll get more experience, and just really, really make sure you've got the basic stuff down, whether it just be your simple grammar or composition, all that stuff. Like, it matters.
Right.
It matters, and once you have the basics down, everything's just going to be a lot easier. And I'm still in the learning process now, dude, because like, the people that I'm working with, they've been kind of editing, well, let's just say, I'm strongly considering another revision of the first book, and
Mm-hmm.
basically it's not necessarily just because it has to be done, but they said they said, hey, like what you have is good, and just with some more guidance, or we can work on this to to turn good into great.
Right.
And the goal is not to be good. The goal is to be great for me
Right.
on that. So I'm trying to stay just as open and receptive to that as much as possible, even if it might be a blow to my ego. Some I'll get over it, but again, the basic stuff matters, and just keep in mind for anyone, like the whole writing process is complicated, right? And it's Stephen King basically says all writing is it's just refined thinking
Yes.
put on paper, and I agree with that statement like so much. And the last thing I'll say with that is just, and this was kind of just, I'd known this, I just kind of strayed from it a little bit, and it was just kind of reiterated to me here lately, but simple is better when it comes to that. And just kind of like, don't underestimate your readers or your audience, so to speak, like, and what I mean is like, by not underestimating them, like, don't doubt their intelligence or what their perception is or comprehension is on things, because like the human mind in general has a really interesting way of like filling in the blanks to things,
Right.
and I've noticed that a lot through some of my meditations that I've been doing here, and it's kind of like, and what I mean by that too is just, it's trying to embrace more of the spiritual side of myself, and potentially unlock certain things, right? Like that it's just, you gotta kind of be able to filter out like, okay, like, is this like something genuine that I'm perceiving here, or is my mind just, or is the imagination just filling in the blanks?
Right. And that is honestly a perfect and beautiful way to end this interview, everyone. So before we officially end this amazing author interview, I want to give a huge thank you to our guest, Will, for joining us today and being the first of many authors to come for my May lineup. Will, thank you so much for joining us today. And where can people follow you to learn more about the Nameless War, or if they just want to chat with you?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to get a hold of me. I said it earlier, I'm not a huge social media dude. I would say the best way probably is just to follow me on Instagram, and it's gonna be Han underscore Swolleman author, if I'm not mistaken, on that. So you can, I try to be as active on Instagram as I can. And I've also got my LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn just as Will Solomon, which I think, yeah, you've got me on LinkedIn too, right,
Yeah,
Gabriel?
yes, I do.
On that, okay, yeah. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn too, just because I consider it a good way to kind of like have your professional portfolio online, so to speak, like that. And my link tree, you can get a hold of me on Linktree, or find my book and all the distributors just on that main Linktree, which is going to be Linktree Rainman Grundy on it. That was my former streaming name on that. And yeah, here soon actually. So I don't have it up yet, but I'm actually working with I'm working on getting my author website up here, like in the very near future here. So once I get that up, and we get all the revisions done for it and all that, I'll definitely be putting it out there, to just, that way it's kind of like myself and everything that I have is just kind of like there all on one platform,
Awesome. I will link all those down below in the description of this video, the handles, as well as the link to buy a copy of The Nameless War, which is on Amazon. So, listeners and viewers, thank you all so much for joining me for the very first author interview for the month of May. Again, I want to give a huge thank you to our guest, Will Solomon for joining us and being the first guest of this month. Will, thank you so much for coming on the show and allowing us to peek into your world as an author.
Oh, yeah, no problem. The pleasure's mine, Gabriel.
Thank you, Will. And viewers, be on the lookout for more authors and historians and guests coming this week and the weeks after. Be on the lookout on my social media and LinkedIn because I'll be posting the guests there as well. And make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. And until next time, this has been The Wandering Scribe and The Wandering Quill signing out, and we'll see you next time.